Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 60, the Big 6-0. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, here from the Valley on a beautiful Friday afternoon, getting ready for some Steelers preseason, getting ready to go to Diamondbacks Phillies tonight, which is fun because the Diamondbacks eliminated the Phillies in the NLCS last year. Just came back from Boston. I'll get into that into a second. And yes, for this week's MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get podcasts, videos on YouTube, lots of fights have been announced. We had ADXC last week, Ultimate Fighters episode 9 and 10, because I had the early pod before I went to the East Coast. PFL playoffs results from the past week. Some boxing news, UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi recap, and then UFC Fight Night Vegas 95 preview. So a loaded show. But yeah, got to go to Boston. Friend's bachelor party with a bunch of Seattle guys, and just really got to enjoy the city, do some touristy stuff, eat some good Boston food, have some East Coast pizza, have some pasta, have a cannoli, my first cannoli. Had a really good B&B location on the south end, which seems to be a great spot. Kind of the beachy vibe of the area by the port, and I was surprised how the beach there was actually legit. Nice water, nice sand. Wish I would have went to the beach more. Got my first game at Fenway. Got to go Tuesday night and Wednesday. Most of the guys didn't get in until Wednesday, so I got a day in before. Got to catch 2 games at Fenway. The coolest aura of a ballpark / stadium I've ever been to. You walk in, they have the whole street included in the stadium. There's vibes, there's live music, there's the team stores that are massive, the history of the stadium, the old seats. Oh man, it was just an amazing time going to that ballpark. What a scene it was. It's crazy how the infrastructure they still have there, the old, wooden seats, the obstructed views, lots of seats with obstructed views. I got lucky on the first night. I made friend with the season ticket holder that had an extra seat next to him, so I didn't have any obstructed views. And then the day with the bachelor party, there were 7 of us, couldn't move around. A little bit of an obstruction with the pillar in the way and whatnot. But fantastic ball games. What else did we do? I went to a concert at the theater right there in Fenway, which is a really cool venue, and just had a good time. So it was nice to have a few days off. Reset, doing the pod late, but in time for this weekend's fight night. So let's jump right into episode 60. We have a rebooked bout, Brad Tavares and Jung-Young Park for October 12th. Really excited about that. Was super stoked about that fight. Bummed that whatever happened to Park illness-wise happened. But a bunch of other fights on this card. We have Brandon Royval, Tatsuro Taira, which is a great flyweight showdown, a real big test for Tatsuro. We have Corey McKenna, Polyana Vienna. We have Abdul Razak Al Hassan and Josh Fremd. Moving to the next fight night on October 19th. This guy is staying active. I'm loving this guy, the energy. Charles Johnson taking on Sumanderi October 19th. We have one hell of a bantamweight showdown with Rob Font and Kyler Phillips. We have Jessica Penne and Elise Reed. And then for November 9th, we have Luana Pinheiro booked against Jillian Robertson, which would be a really good showdown there as well. UFC 307, we had 3 fights announced. We got Jose Aldo, Mario Bautista. This is officially announced for Salt Lake City. It's been rumored, but it became validated today. And I've somewhat debated going just to go see Jose Aldo in person. We have Kayla Harrison, Ketlin Vieira for the title eliminator bout. And then Carla Esparza's retirement fight against Tisha Torres. And then we have UFC 308 becoming absolutely yacked We have Marcos Rogerio de Lima and Kennedy and Shekwaku. We have Lerone Murphy, Dan Ige. I mean, absolute banger. We got Max Holloway, Ilya Taporia. This is all in Abu Dhabi. Cyril Gahn, Alexander Volkov. And then Robert Whitaker, Khamzat Chimaev. 5-rounder. Sign me up. Yes, please. And then we have Abus Magomedov and Bruno Ferreira. And then Magomed Ankalaev and Alexander Rakic. They're really trying to separate Ankalaev from Alex Pereira. You would assume a win here for Ankalaev, and he will for sure get that chance. But we're not done. We also got Jeff Neal, Rafael Dos Anjos. Absolute banger of a card going down for UFC 308. And then first bout announced for MSG, Eric Anders, ya boy, taking on Chris Weidman. Potential retirement bout for Chris Weidman at UFC 309. And then lastly, here in a couple weeks, Jared Cannonier and Kyle Baralho, August 24th. Happening in the Apex, not too sure how I feel about that. And then Calvin Kattar out in his bout against Kyle Nelson. But the Mean Machine, Steve Garcia, stepping in, which should be still one hell of a scrap. ADXC 5 last week, there was a full card. The only thing I care about is the ex-UFC fighters. We have Uriah Faber and Chad Mendez, both with no-gi grappling victories. Bravo to the old veterans. And then we had Ultimate Fighter Episode 9 the week before. Valentina Shevchenko's team gets a win, gets a fighter booked into the finale. The fight wasn't super exciting. It went to a third round, really because Valentina's fighter didn't do enough. He grappled throughout the fight to win, but didn't have enough damage. They gave him a third round, even though he won the first 2 rounds, and grappled his way to the ship. And then in episode 10, we had Offley from Team Grasso getting Rody Roet's Valentina's first pick quickly by a guillotine. Rudy was just way too aggressive to start with his wrestling and, made him pay. So now both coaches having someone in the finale. Next week we have 2 Grasso fighters going at it. So there will at least be 2 fighters from Team Grasso. And then they had the coaches competition, which was brutal to watch. Watching Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso try to shoot a basketball. They couldn't even get short little jumpers right next to the hoop. I mean, it was pretty brutal. And then in boxing, or technically PFL, I should say, we have 2 big bouts for them. Francis Ngannou back October 19th against Henan Ferreira. And then we have the 2 probably best women fighters outside the UFC, Chris Cyborg and Larissa Pacheco, who had defeated Kayla Harrison going down October 19th. So massive card for PFL. And then we have Jake Paul and Mike Tyson officially back on as they are doing a presser August 18th, which is next week in New York City. Or in a little more than a week. And then we had Terrence Crawford this weekend defeating Israel Madrimov via unanimous decision. I assumed he'd get the win. I didn't watch it. I had no idea who Madrimov is. That's the world of boxing. But a big name in boxing with another victory. But let's jump into what happened last Saturday. I got to watch these fights on the plane on the way back because I left early Saturday morning. And it was an early fight night card. So UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi, I went 9-5 in the picks. So we're at 365 wins, 183 losses, and 7 no contests or draws overall. This year, 172 wins, 97 losses, and 4 no contests or draws. If I were to recap the card, I did think the main card delivered. It really carried the card because I was falling asleep on the plane early in the prelims. As the prelims moved on, there was some decent fights, but the rest of the prelims were pretty boring. I did think the main event put the team on its back. It was worth the squeeze. I do think that there was basically a title fight in the main event PFL or a PFL pay-per-view level quality fight. And I think it will give for a fight night overall an 8 out of 10. A good fight we did not break down. We had Kai Fernandez with a round 1 TKO over Muhammad Yahya. Abu Dhabi's local fighter got absolutely train wrecked in that fight. His leg absolutely destroyed right out the gate. So props to Fernandez for doing that. But we'll kick it off in the prelims. We had Guram Kutateladze with a unanimous decision over Jordan Vucenic from Cage Warriors. And man, did Jordan come out looking confident. He was absolutely bullying Guram. He looked like the bigger frame than Guram. And honestly, it seems sometimes like Guram, as talented as he is, should find a way to go to the bantamweight division. I think he would be an absolute brute force there, because a lot of the guys in this division is just looking bigger than him. Regardless, Jordan came out, bullied Guram, pushed him back, took him down, and round 2, it was a razor close round, but Guram actually was able to let his striking go, let his hands go, and he landed a lot more volume than Jordan. But Guram even got a takedown of his own in round 2, which I believe won him the round. And then round 3, Jordan got high on a takedown, got Guram down, got high on his back. Guram was getting him back, Jordan had Guram's freaking neck, and right as Guram's fall into the cage, pushes back, somehow gets over on Jordan, and then is able to somehow quickly get on Jordan's back, get a body triangle in, and ends up going and damn near gets a finish. One of the more insane scrambles and opportunity for Guram to somehow go from falling up, pushing, flipping, going back over, and getting 2 guys back in body triangle. Insane sequence there. But it was a fun fight. Jordan seems to be like the real deal. Statistically, Guram landed 87 total strikes, 30 of them significant, with the 1 takedown in 4 attempts. He also had 4 minutes and 5 seconds of control time. And Jordan landed 81 total strikes, 34 of those significant. So you can see the similarities here. Guram landed 6 more strikes, Jordan 4 more significant. He had the knockdown, and then 4 minutes and 32 seconds of control time. So he had like 30 seconds more of control time than Guram. But he was 0 for 5 in takedown attempts. The takedowns he got really weren't considered takedowns, I guess. That was from the knockdown. But Guram ends his 2-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak. Jordan loses his UFC debut and ends his 4-fight winning streak since coming up from Cage Warriors. But I have to give credit to Jordan. I'm not sure if it's the credit that Jordan deserves or if Guram is just continually underperforming a bit, because he has the technical ability and the mixed martial arts skill to be a problem. Regardless, what's next? I would love to see Guram and Jared Gordon go after it. And for Jordan, how about a fight with Jamie Malarkey? But moving on to the big dogs, we had Shamil Gaziev with a unanimous decision over Dontel Mays. And this is one of the fights that I was talking about falling asleep, man. This fight was a treacherous performance. Both men being measured early, throwing some super sloppy shots. Shamil continuing to clinch Mays, try to close the distance in the cage, weigh on him, slow him down, or find a way to use that heavyweight momentum to take Dontel down, lay on him. Very little offense from getting on top. No submission opportunities. Very little ground and pound. Neither man really looked like they wanted to go for the finish. Dontel did try with some heavy hitters as the fight went on, but Shamil kept taking him down and laying on him. Statistically, Shamil landed 89 total strikes, 31 of them significant, with 2 takedowns and 3 attempts. He had 11 minutes and 58 seconds of control time, so almost all but 3 minutes of control time. Dontel landed 57 total strikes, 27 of them significant, and he was 0 for 2 on his own takedown attempts. So Shamil starts a new winning streak, moves to 6-1, 2-1 in the UFC, and Dontel starts a new losing streak, is 2-2 since 2022. What's next? Well, I would love to see Shamil and Alexander Romanov. I think that's the fight to make. And for Dontel, how about a scrap with Muhammad Usman? But moving on, we had a brilliant performance by Azamat Murzakanov with a round 2 TKO over Alonzo Menefield. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Azamat. And this was one of the fights that I got wrong, but I'm not really surprised. I mean, Azamat was just slugging away and had too quick a hands for Alonzo. He clipped Alonzo a couple times early, and Alonzo was just kind of a walking zombie, throwing slow, powerful shots in offense, and was just kind of had stone feet with some defense. And when he did throw the big power shots, he was whiffing at Murzakanov. But Murzakanov landed with almost every single significant strike he threw. It was hitting Alonzo right on the button. And Azamat just put too good of a pace on him, wouldn't let off the gas, and ran through Alonzo by mid-second round. Statistically, Azamat landed 48 total strikes, 45 of them significant. So again, everything he landed was coming in hot, and it was right on the button. He got the knockdown and had 44 seconds of control time, and he was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. And Alonzo landed 19 total strikes, only 15 significant, had 51 seconds of control time. So Alonzo extends his losing streak to 2. He is 4-2-1 since 2022. He does exit the top 15 rankings, while Azamat stays undefeated, extends his winning streak to 13. He's now 4-0 in the UFC and moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 11. So, what's next? Well, I would love to see a collision course between Azamat and Carlos Ulberg. That would be absolutely brilliant. And for Alonzo, how about a match with Modestas Bukauskas, who just fought recently? And then moving us into quite a main card as Yoel Alvarez with a round 3 TKO over Elves Brenner. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Alvarez. And I will say, ever since I've seen Alvarez in the UFC when he was like 26, I was like, this guy is going to be a problem. He hasn't been super active, has had some canceled fights. But what an absolute brilliant performance by Yoel. He kept Alvarez at distance and kind of had him on skates after landing really precise and powerful shots and landing quite a bit of volume early in the fight. And that's not something that usually Elves shies away from, is bringing the fight to his opponent. But when you feel someone's power and he's piecing you up and is precise like that, it'll do something to you. And he damn near landed everything he threw like Azamat. His precision definitely forced Elves to make mistakes. And once he rocked Elves by round 3, he got the finish with just a barrage of knees. He got him in a tight clinch, knee. And, pretty much crippled him. But Elves are pretty, he'd been known thus far in the UFC, again, for being durable, offensive, and just breaking his opponents down. So you got to give that much credit to Alvarez, who made him completely change his game plan, look like an absolutely different fighter, and made him not seem like he belonged in the octagon, because that's just how good Yoel is, and that's really how good this division is. After being inactive the past few years in the lightweight division, I think the division is once again on notice, and he's now 30 years old fighting in his prime. The future is bright for the Spaniard, Yoel Alvarez. Statistically, Yoel landed 114 total strikes, 95 of them significant. He was packing a punch. He had a submission attempt, a knockdown, and was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. And Elves landed 45 total insignificant strikes. He was 0 for 5 in takedown attempts. And that's another credit to Alvarez, making Elves turn into a grappler, because he was just, on his bike back up against the cage, just trying to kind of stay away from adversity, which is very unfamiliar territory for him. So what's next? Well, Alvarez called for King Green. I'm definitely open to that fight. I'm sure King is as well, as he's usually not, turning anyone down. So why not book that fight? I don't think we need to rush Alvarez into the top 10 or anything like that. And for Elves, I'd love to see him fight Michael Johnson. I don't know if Johnson would want to take a younger fighter like that at this point in his career. So if not, how about Joe Selecki? Either way, not a lack of opponents in the very, very deep lightweight division. Moving on, we had Mackenzie Dern with a unanimous decision over Lupi Godinez. Another fight I got wrong, but another fight that was close to pick, not really surprised. Lupi, though, I will say, a lot of people are giving Dern the credit in this fight. Lupi had really tight boxing and had that really high guard. I think that kind of affected her in her scorecards because her shots are so quick in and out and tight. You don't really get to see what lands, and she's covering up a lot of her stuff. I thought that her shots connected better, and definitely you could see in Mackenzie's face she was getting beat up as the rounds went by. But Dern was pushing forward the entire fight, which usually Lupi's a little bit more coming forward. I think she didn't want to do too much to risk getting taken down and deal with the grappling of Mackenzie. But Dern was pushing forward, throwing big old shots coming in at Lupi. She's, pretty confident with her hands of just letting them fly. And you could see them connect. But when they did connect, Lupi had that high guard. I don't think it was as damaging and as clean as what Lupi was landing. I'm not necessarily upset at the decision here, but I actually felt real time while watching this fight. You could have easily just have given Godinez 2 of the rounds by landing more clear, significant strikes with accuracy. But again, for the judges, Mackenzie was aggressive. She was controlling the pace of the fight, controlled the center of the octagon, which I think if Lupi was doing more of that and pushing forward and a little bit more offensive versus waiting for Mackenzie to come in than throwing, I think she could have, changed the judges' minds. But you have to give credit to Dern and really just being confident after having a couple bad defeats and letting her offense fly and coming out and just going for it. Because Godinez is a tough striker, and she credited her there. And you also have to credit Godinez for the grappling defense and the scrambling ability. Once Mackenzie did get her down, there was some beautiful scrambles. I thought, regardless, a fantastic fight by both women, high-quality fight. I could have gone either way on the scorecards, but mad props to Mackenzie Dern getting back in the win column. Mackenzie's always winning. I'm sure if you guys watched the weigh-in video that probably one of the more viewed posts Dana White's posted, which is kind of funny. Anyways, statistically, Mackenzie landed 103 total strikes, 72 of them significant. She had 2 takedowns in 5 attempts and 2 minutes and 45 seconds of control time. Lupi landed 72 total strikes, 67 of them significant. She had 2 takedowns in 3 attempts, a submission attempt, a reversal, and 1 minute and 41 seconds of control time. So you can see the fight went a little bit everywhere. I really enjoyed it. I just wish Lupi would have pushed forward and let her hands go versus waiting for Mackenzie to close the distance. But Mackenzie ends her 2-fight losing streak. She starts a new winning streak. She's now 3-3 since 2022. But somehow she does move down in the rankings to number 8. One spot she was at 7. And Lupi extends her losing streak to 2. She is 5-3 since 2022, though. She's been absolutely active, and she stays at 10 in the rankings. So what's next? Well, Mackenzie has fought most of the top of the division, and I don't think this will get her Tatiana Suarez. So how about the winner of the Marina Rodriguez and Yasmin Lucindo fight? And for Lupe, she could fight with the veteran Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I think that would be perfect for both women. Moving on, there wasn't much to this one. We had Michael Chiesa with a round 1 submission via rear naked choke over Tony Ferguson. And again, not a lot here. Both men starting kind of slow, measuring each other up. But once Chiesa kind of exploded and closed distance with the combination, he was easily able to get Tony down, get his back for a quick rear naked choke. And it just seemed like Tony wasn't ready, or he just doesn't have it anymore. But this was supposed to be Tony's retirement fight. He didn't commit to retiring. I do think Dana White will make him commit if, I don't think he'll let him fight in the UFC anymore. But either way, the man of the hour here was Michael Chiesa. You got to give him major props after such a long drought. Being the man he is, giving Tony the microphone, the opportunity to have the mic in his, quote-unquote retirement fight. But it has to feel great for him getting back in the win column no matter who it is. Statistically, Tony only landed 10 total insignificant strikes. Michael only landed 4 total insignificant with the takedown and submission attempt. So Michael puts an end to that 3-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak. This is his first win since 2021. And Tony extends his losing streak to 8. And I would have to believe this will be his last UFC fight. He put one glove down in the octagon, punched it. It was a weird scene. Didn't put both those gloves in. Kind of was weird and awkward on the mic. I do think he might try to fight in other promotions. I don't know where his contract status is, if that's reasonable. But due to his health concerns, with how much damage and how crazy he is, I just hope we don't see it anymore. Regardless, I won't pick any next fight for Tony. But for Michael Chiesa, I would love to see a showdown between him and the veteran Nicholas Dalby. I think that would be absolutely brilliant. But then we had one hell of a bantamweight showdown. The bantamweight stealing the show this evening as Deiveson Figueiredo, the former flyweight champion, gets a unanimous decision over Marlon Vera. Now, I think Marlon, in his UFC career the past few years in his prime, has really been bitten from not being very active early in his fights. But he was more active out of the gates in this one. It seemed to be like he showed up in a little bit better shape as well. He never is in bad cardio shape, but a little bit thicker. But he was overcommitting on his shots early. He was trying to be offensive and aggressive. He's just not quick and athletic enough, I don't think. And Figgy was able to easily get the takedowns, control the tempo early in round one. And I think that really set the tone for this fight because Figgy, coming from flyweight, very quick, has some power, and is just really a true athlete. Round two, it was a very close round. Both men landed good shots, but Figgy put Marlon on defense with 6 takedown attempts. He really started turning into a grappler, and every time Marlon came forward, he was doing takedown attempts to keep him back and control the center of the octagon. I don't know if he necessarily wanted the takedowns, but at round 3, it seemed like Figgy was slowing down a little bit from all the volume that he was firing off. And I absolutely think at this point Marlon needed a finish. Although it was a close fight, he was throwing some shots, but Figgy knocked his ass down. The first UFC opponent to knock down Marlon Vera. Massive credit to Figgy. This guy's looking like an absolute unit and problem moving up a division. But Figgy's durable. He had his cardio hold up against a very good cardio fighter in Marlon Vera. He was able to out-grapple Marlon and just really executed a beautiful game plan. I continue to feel like if Marlon had a better fighting IQ in a round-by-round situation, like him being down round 1, okay, round 2 was super close. Deiveson's putting out those takedowns. He's not getting any. What can I do to be a little bit more offensive, to land some big strikes or get a takedown on my own to win the round? Right? In round 3, he could have pushed forward if he had done that and changed up the game plan, stole another round. Like, he's always fighting super close rounds, but it's always on the losing end. And when he is down early, he doesn't do enough late to make it happen. And sometimes he knocks the people out, but a lot of the times he doesn't. So I think if he would double his volume, have a little bit better of an IQ when being in the chaos, Marlon Vera could absolutely be that guy. I just don't think it's going to happen. Regardless, Marlon landed 67 total strikes, 52 of them significant, compared to Deiveson's 59 total and 45 significant. So you could see Marlon actually had more strikes landed, but Deiveson had 2 takedowns and 14 attempts with the knockdown and 2.5 minutes of control time. Again, crazy. Deiveson's the one that got the knockdown. I was at UFC 299 in person in Miami. So when you have a stadium, there's the 100 level, and the 100 level goes up, and then there's like the suite level, and then 200 or 300 level. I was at the very back of the 100 level, and when Sugar Sean landed that knee in the face and orbital of Marlon Vera, I could hear it echo through the arena, even though there's a sold-out arena absolutely screaming in that fight, Colombia versus USA. That's how nasty of a shot he ate and didn't get knocked down. Maybe there is some after effects because that was in March. It really isn't that far removed. But you have to give credit to Figgy. He is coming up to bantamweight and becoming a true title contender. The problem is there's not a lack of contenders in the division. So, Figgy extends his winning streak to 3. He is 4-1 since 2022, and he moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 5. Marlon extends his losing streak and is 3-3 since 2022. He moves down 3 spots to number 7 in the rankings. So I think the next fight for sure is going to be Petr Yan and Deiveson Figueiredo. And for Marlon, he could square up with Jonathan Martinez. I think that would be the next best bout for him. Then in the co-main, we had Shara Magomedov with a unanimous decision over Mihail Oleksiejczuk, which was fight of the night, 50 G's to Shara, the pirate. But this fight was Mikel, I can't remember how they said it. It looks like Michael, but it's Mikel, Poland. He was determined. He continued to push forward, get in Shara's face right out the gates, and he does pack some serious punches. But as he came in, although Shara had his back against the cage, he was just picking him apart from distance, taking him with a absolutely insane amount of kicks early in the fight, and then just using his speed to his advantages as the fight went on. Because although Mikel, came in with some big power shots, his 3 shots, Shara would give 3 kicks and about 5 other shots back. But as the fight wore on, McCall's power kind of slid down a little bit. He was still landing good shots, but he tried to clinch up and take Shara down because he was really getting desperate, and that's not his game. He wasn't having success there. He really hadn't had much going on in the fight. He was losing in the scorecards and getting kind of pieced up. But I was impressed that Shara, after filming the movie, not fighting all that long ago, having the cardio to get the volume that he put out, and I thought he should have got a finish, if you ask me, if he really wanted to put on a show, and I'm sure he tried. He had McCall rocked really bad in round 2. It didn't seem like he pounced on it and took that opportunity. But either way, I was impressed by Shara. Oleksiejczuk, I don't think is the best fighter in the UFC, but he possesses some serious knockout power. Shara was able to eat some shots and just really put on a skill display. And the stats speak for that. Shara landed 123 total strikes, 97 of them significant, compared to McCall's 94. So he, put about 30 more, and 77 significant. So Shara had 20 more significant. But McCall had 3 takedowns and 7 attempts. Again, that's not his game. Shara turned him into a grappler. And McCall had 2 minutes and 39 seconds of control time. So Shara extends his winning streak to 14. He is 3-0 in the UFC. And McCall extends his losing streak to 3. He is 3-5 since 2022. And although this was fight of the night, it was a pretty good performance. Oleksiejczuk talked about this potentially being his last fight. He feels like he's been fed to the dogs. He didn't even feel like he was going to win. He's obviously not mentally in a good spot being in the losing streak, and it doesn't seem like he's taking this seriously. Regardless, what's next? I think Shara and Ikram Aliskerov is the fight to make. Although he called out Nick Diaz, that would be fun. I'm down for that, but I absolutely doubt that will happen. Who knows? He said in Abu Dhabi. That would be perfect timing. I don't know if Nick could make it to Abu Dhabi, though, as his last Abu Dhabi fight got canceled. And for McCall, he has talked about not wanting to continue if he loses. Who knows, again, where his head's at. But if he does fight, he could fight Eric Anders. But Eric Anders just got booked, so who knows at that point, because Eric Anders just got Chris Weidman at MSG, and I'm sure he would much rather have that fight. Then we had the amazing main event. Golly, what a fight this was. Umar Nurmagomedov with a unanimous decision over Corey Sandhagen. This should have been fight of the night if you ask me. I did pick Corey. He was an underdog. Corey battled his ass off. I am not surprised Umar won the fight. But again, this was an absolute brilliant display of MMA. I loved Corey's walkout, the song. It was hyped up. His demeanor, he just looked like he was there for violence. I've heard him on Joe Rogan and some of his own stuff where he talks about the mental warfare he gets to prepare for a fight, and it looked like he was there to kill or be killed. But the grappling, the scrambles, the game plan by both men, the IQ in the rounds, in the moment, when you're in round 4, 23rd minute of your fight, and you're still able to have the wherewithal, what to do, where to go, what the game plan is, I mean, that's where you become a title contender and a real champion, and these guys have it. The volume they put out, the durability they showed, everything you could think of was on display in Abu Dhabi. The takeaway that I have, though, is that, yes, Corey Sandhagen is very, very good. He's an absolute problem. but Umar passed every test or every box on the test here with the flying colors and is an absolute problem in the division and a true title contender. We have another Nurmagomedov problem in the UFC. We had Khabib, now we have Umar, Usman's in Bellator / PFL. And I just don't know if any other bantamweights in the division could defend the takedowns as well and get up as well as Corey did in this fight. I mean, he put on one hell of a display. He came very, very prepared. The problem for Corey, though, is that he was having to deal with the grappling so much that it took away from his striking, and he wasn't able to be as aggressive with his offensive striking that I think he needed to be to win this fight. I wanted to see more knees, maybe some spinning stuff, some elbows, but you're so worried of that grappling threat of Umar, especially with how many takedowns he threw in here. It took away from that a little bit. As the fight went on, Umar's boxing opened up as well. You could tell he was becoming confident. Khabib had great coaching in there, say, hey, have confidence in your hand. And again, Corey's so worried about the grappling that Umar was able to be, more open with his striking, take more chances with his kicks and his boxing. And you could tell that, although Umar hasn't been super active, he is vastly improved in the striking department, and he is becoming the real deal. He actually reminds me a lot of Islam early in his UFC career where he was grappling heavy. You could see some moments of his striking and some potential there. And now we look where he is. It's really good. That's kind of where Umar is, and he's getting to that point where he's going to be a serious problem here. And statistically, Corey landed 80 total strikes, 71 of them significant. He was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. Umar landed 123 total strikes, 98 of them significant. So you can see he outvolumed Corey quite a bit because Corey put so much energy and effort into the takedowns, the scrambles, and just he had a lot to think about. It can be hard to try to, hey, I need to get back to striking. Because he landed 27 more significant strikes, 43 more total. Very, very impressed by Umar here. And then he had 5 takedowns and 13 attempts. Again, I don't think any other bantamweight in the division is defending that many takedowns, and only 5 minutes and 11 seconds of control time. Very massive credit to Corey. Now, Umar stays undefeated. He extends his winning streak to 18, 6-0 in the UFC, and he climbs up 8 spots in the rankings to number 2. Now, Corey ends his 3-fight winning streak. He does start a new losing streak and moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 4. So what's next? Well, Umar's going to fight the winner of Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili at the Sphere, UFC 306. And while Corey, if he's fighting the best ranked opponent, it would be Henry Cejudo. But my bet is more so on Dominic Cruz. I don't think he really has a clear path to anything in the division. So maybe even he fights the top 15 newcomer, Montel Jackson. I really don't know. I'm going to say Henry Cejudo is the best bet because it's the highest ranked opponent for him. Either way, I can't wait to see how the bantamweight division shakes out. Petr Yan, Figgy, Umar getting the next title shot. We have the title shot coming up, and anyone that Corey Sandhagen fights is going to be absolutely brilliant. So Abu Dhabi put on an absolute show. That main event was absolutely insane. I'm going to have to watch it back just for fun. But this weekend, it's not quite as exciting at all. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. UFC Fight Night Vegas 95, prelims at 1 p.m. Pacific, main card at 4 p.m. Pacific, only on ESPN Plus, and it should be. To preview the card, there was a lot of early week fallouts. The good fights on the cards were out. Javid Basharat having to pull out a Chris Gutierrez. There's just so much junk being done. Alan Nascimento, Rafael Filio coming out by Wednesday because Alan Nascimento is out with the illness. Urosh Medic out against Danny Barlow. Nikolai Beretenikov's in. And then Kwang Lei stepping in against Chris Gutierrez, who was actually supposed to fight at the first season or episode of the new season of the Contender Series. But now he gets a damn near top 15 bantamweight. So a lot of fallout, a lot of change. There might be 2 to 3 decent fights on this entire card. To be honest, most of the card is an early prelim level quality. There could be opportunities for some of these new young fighters to make name for themselves. But if I'm previewing it, I'm giving this card a 2 out of 10. If you're like me, you need to spend some quality time with the girlfriend and not watch the fights live, this would be a great on-demand option. I do think this is the best fight, though. In the prelims, we have Yusuf the Moroccan Devil Zalal, 27 years old with a 14-5-1 record, taking on Jarno Arens, 29 years old with a 14-5-1 record. I do think this will be a really solid, violent scrap. I am really excited to see how Zalal does again. He's really showed out throughout his career with the potential of his talent. And when he had his UFC return against Billy Quarantillo last fight, he put on a brilliant display. And he's still only 27. Now, Jarno, he's a very aggressive striker. He likes to go for it early in the fight. So the longer the fight goes, I do think Yusuf is going to have more of an advantage. Breaking this down, Yusuf is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Factory X. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's an LFA alum, and he's been in the UFC 2 times. He came in young, had a little bit of adversity, showed some potential, left the UFC, dominated, and is now back. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, 1-0 in the UFC since he's returned, and 7 of his 14 wins are via submission. Now, Jarno is a Brave alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-2 in the UFC, and 5 of his 14 wins are both via submission. So both heavy on the submission victories. Now, Jarno is about to enter his prime, and a win versus Zalal would really boost his MMA career. You know, he's 1-2 in his last 3. In his prime, that's not where you want to be, especially in this division. I just don't think Zalal's about to waste his second stint in the UFC. I think he picks Jarno apart on the feet due to his speed. Although I do think Jarno's going to have more of a power advantage, and I wouldn't be surprised to see throughout the fight Zalal throwing takedown attempts. He's, done pretty good on that, and Jarno's shown that his opponents could take him down pretty easily. So I think that's going to be the big advantage, and for that reason, I'm taking the Moroccan Devil. I'm taking Yusuf Zalal on those parlays. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we have Janata Deniz, 33 years old with an undefeated 7-0 record, taking on Carl Williams, 34 years old with a 10-1 record. I think this fight has completely flopped on the lines. So let me look. Carl Williams opened as an underdog, and now he's minus 200. That's how wild the lines have changed. Regardless, Janata is a kickboxer. Definitely has great striking, a lot better than Carl's, but he is facing a heavyweight who is more than happy to grapple and take him down. He had 12 takedown attempts against Justin Tafa in his last fight in March, and that's really going to be the story if Deniz can avoid the takedown attempts. Breaking this one down, Janata has a kickboxing and Muay Thai style. He's an orthodox fighter with a blue belt in BJJ. He's undefeated on a 7-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC, and all 7 of his wins are via knockout. Now, Carl trains out of ATT. He's a PFL Icon Fighting and Contender Series alum. He's on a 7-fight winning streak, 4-0 in the UFC, and he has a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, again, Deniz is clearly going to have the striking advantage. Is going to look to keep Carl at kickboxing range, chop out his legs, give him some teep kick type stuff. And as Carl tries to close the distance, he's going to want to make him pay for it. But in Janata's last fight, Austin Lane, who is not a grappling heavy fighter, was easily able to get Deniz down. So I do expect Carl to be able to do it. He trains out of ATT. That's their bread and butter. He's probably going to lay on him and get a path to victory, Shamil Gaziev style. For that reason, I'm taking Carl Williams. I will put him on that parlay. We'll mark that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we have Carol Hossa, 29 years old with a 7-6 record and the number 8 next to her name, taking on Pani Banzai Kianzad, 32 years old with a 17-8 record and the number 11 next to her name. Now, Hossa has really showed some improved striking. She's done a great job against her competition, besides fighters that were really good grapplers as well. Her last fight, she was defeated by a very good Irene Aldana, But she was very competitive in that fight. It was a split decision. She was tit for tat throughout. And Pannie hasn't looked very great of late, but she's fought really good competition herself. Pannie's a scrappy fighter and is going to make this a fight, but I believe that that's going to play in Rosa's favor, and she's going to mix in the striking and grappling. But breaking it down, Carol has a black belt in BJJ, a dark blue belt in Muay Thai. She had the most leg kicks landed in a single UFC bout, 95 of them things against Irene Aldana. She's on a one-fight losing streak, 2-3 since 2022, but she was fighting in the featherweight division, which no longer exists, that's why. Pannie has a boxing, shoot fighting, and submission wrestling style. She won gold in the 2011 National Women's Featherweight Shoot Fighting Championship. She has a purple belt in BJJ. She's a Cage Warriors, Invicta, and Ultimate Fighter alum. She's a former Cage Warriors champion. She's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022, and she does have a 3-inch leg reach advantage. Now, I've been impressed with Rosa's rise. Now that she fights in the bantamweight division, she is very big for the division as well. Excuse me. And Pannie, I've always enjoyed since the Ultimate Fighter, but she hasn't been super active lately and somewhat been outclassed by the better competition in the division. I think that Carol's going to give her a good mix of leg kicks again, and she's going to look to push Pannie back and look for takedowns. For that reason, I'm taking Carol Rosa. I am putting her on that parlay. This is damn close, but we marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Hopefully, if anything, with the lack of fights here, we can at least hit a nice little parlay action for the weekend. And we're only breaking down 3 main card fights. That's where we're at. Sorry, not sorry. And this fight really got interesting this morning after weigh-ins. We got Chelsea Chandler, 30 years old with a 6-2 record and the number 14 next to her name, taking on Yana Foxy Santos, 34 years old with a 14-8 record and the number 12 next to her name. Now, coming in before the weigh-ins, I did think this was somewhat of an interesting fight. 2 ranked fighters. Chelsea, a natural featherweight, who really just looks to grapple and dominate. And she did so against a very good Josanne Nunes back in March. And Yana's definitely struggled against grapplers, but I do expect, regardless of the weigh-ins, Yana to have a clean striking advantage. But Chelsea came in 5 pounds overweight. She had terrible body language, looked like she didn't want to be there. I think she might be getting cut from the UFC win, lose, or draw, as she's missed weight 3 of her 9 fights. But breaking it down, Chelsea has a purple belt in BJJ. She's an Invicta alum. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2022. And Yana has a Taekwondo, Muay Thai, and Gado Jutsu style. She has a black belt in Taekwondo. She was the 2007 WKADO World Champion. She's a K1, M1, and Invicta alum. Also an Invicta former champion. She's on a 3-fight losing streak, is only 1-3 since 2021. And she just posted about not having to breastfeed and deal with motherhood with her new baby. So she's in really good shape, and she says her hormones are corrected. It looks like she's got some positive momentum going for her. 7 of her 14 wins are via knockout, and 3 of her 8 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Yana is nearing 35. She's been doing MMA and just mixed martial arts in general for a long time. She's tougher than her own good. She hasn't fought at a very high level in a few years. She did, look like a solid striker against Carol Rosa. And I do believe, although Chelsea doesn't have striking, that Yana, possesses, that she will be bigger. And now she's got a 5-pound advantage and going to look to bully Yana for takedowns, control her, smother her, and exhaust her to get a decision. And that was originally my first pick until I saw her demeanor, her body language. That's why before bets, I like to see the weigh-ins. It really could change your thoughts and really the outcome of the fight. So I'm switching to Yana Santos, but I am avoiding this on any parlays. I'm more hoping Yana kicks the shit out of her for her, her showing up 5 pounds over. That's just out of control. Then we had another weight miss here, but I'm excited for this one. We got Chepe Machine Gun Mariscal, 31 years old with a 16-6 record, taking on Damon Action Jackson, 35 years old with a 23-6-1 record. Now, these two fighters are at different stages in their careers. Chepe is just hitting his prime, on the way up, and Damon is trying to survive in the UFC. He's facing the new era of talent, but a win here could really revive his career. Both fighters love to make it a brawl, should play into the fans', enjoyment, which we'll probably need on this card. But it also plays into Damon's advantage. But Chepe's a hard hitter who's very durable, so this one should be a doozy. Breaking it down, Chepe trains out of Elevation Fight Team. He has a judo style. He's a Ring of Combat, LFA, Cage Fury, and Cage Warriors alum. He's on a 6-fight winning streak and is undefeated in the UFC. And 7 of his 16 wins are via knockout. Now, Damon trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a black belt in BJJ. He is a King of the Cage, Bellator, Legacy FC, PFL, LFA alum, and he's had 2 stints in the UFC. And he was also the Legacy FC and LFA former champ. He's been around. Both guys have been around a lot. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 4-2 since 2022. 15 of his 23 wins are via submission, and 4 of his 6 losses are via knockout. Damon's also sporting a 3.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now here I'm taking the younger, more durable fighter. Damon's solid though, pretty much everywhere. He isn't amazing at anything, but he's well-rounded, and he's going to make Chepe earn it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he mixes in a ton of grappling here. But I am guessing this is going to go to a very close decision. But I am going to take Chepe Mariscal, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. And Damon's pretty upset about Chepe showing up overweight. I think it was like a pound and some change. In the main event, we got a rematch. We have Sergey the Polar Bear Spivak, 29 years old with a 16-3 record and the number 9 next to his name, taking on Marcin Tybura, 38 years old with a 25-8 record and the number 8 next to his name. Now, these two squared up at the beginning of Sergey's UFC career. It was his 3rd fight in the UFC back in February of 2020. And in that fight, Marcin dominated with a unanimous decision victory. I mean, I don't know how dominating a decision could be, but he did. Spivak has improved tremendously over his time in the UFC. He's just now entering his prime, and that might even be premature in the heavyweight division because he's only 29. I mean, shoot, Marcin Tybura could be in the prime in the heavyweight division the way the heavyweight standards are. But Sergey's best win was definitely Derek Lewis in February of 2023, where he got an early takedown and was able to get a submission, I believe. But other than that, he hasn't really defeated any big names. Marcin is definitely having a career resurgence. I mean, granted, he's always been really solid. He has wins over Tai Tuivasa, a tough Blagoy Ivanov, and Alexander Romanov since 2022. But breaking this down, Sergey is an orthodox fighter. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2022. 7 of his 16 wins are via knockout and 7 via submission. So 14 of his 16 wins are via finish, and 3 of his 4 losses are via knockout. So as the heavyweights say, to knock out or be knocked out. Now Marcin has a black belt in BJJ. He's an M1 alum and former champion. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2022. 9 of his 25 wins are via knockout, 7 via submission, so 16 of his 25 wins via finish, and 5 of his 8 losses via knockout. So I repeat, to knock out or be knocked out. Now, when there is a rematch, there's always an interesting mental game going on. Both men knows what happened the first time. Typically, I'd be more bullish on the younger and improving fighter, but Marcin has really looked solid in his last few fights. He's not rapidly declining, although he's 38 and has 9 years on Sergey. But at heavyweight, that's just a different world. It doesn't apply as much than the lower weights because you could be slower but still have power, those kind of things. Now, Sergey could get lucky. He could get a KO. But besides Tom Aspinall, Marcin hasn't been finished in the UFC since 2019. The longer the fight goes, the more it favors the veteran. I think Tybura has been deep quite a few times and has fought 5-round fights. And Sergey hasn't and typically doesn't make it to the third round. And he just has kind of showed a little bit of a lack of endurance, where Marcin seems to have great cardio over the course of 25 minutes. For that reason, I'm taking the veteran Marcin Tybura as the underdog. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Again, I'll probably watch a lot of this on demand. I am most excited about the opening fight, Yusuf Zalal and Jarno Erens. The Chepe fight could be solid, the main event. But regardless, next weekend, back to pay-per-view, a massive overseas show, UFC 305 in Perth, Australia. This is a headliner by the much-anticipated return of Israel Adesanya against Dricus du Plessis. Then we got back-to-back Apex cards before UFC 306 at the Sphere. This is episode 60. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.